Hey, what's going on,
Hey,
dude?
how's it going, man?
Not too bad. Hanging in there. Start a new job tomorrow, so yeah, just little pumped up. So I'm just trying to keep things together.
Congratulations.
Yeah. How's Casey?
Casey's really good, man. I told her about the podcast that we're trying to start up, and she's very into it. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Just like nothing too intense. I was just like, I'm kind of getting to this point where like, okay, I'm feeling lazy. Just like something once a week where like I can kind of watch some movies, kind of hang out a little bit with friends, sort of deal. So like it got kind of feels like a 1-2 punch. So like just trying to
yeah.
like keep up on it. I've got the next few weeks planned out, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, this week I've got you. Next week I'm doing Spencer. We're gonna be doing Robert Eggers. So The Witch and then The Lighthouse. Then like
nice.
after that I'm with Nick and we're gonna do Charlie Kaufman. So like I'm thinking of ending things and that stuff. And then the week after that I have Mark, and then we're gonna be doing Ingmar Bergman.
Sick.
I've got a list going. So I've got another friend that I met out here, so I'm gonna try to see if he can work out a schedule. But fortunately, he's on my time zone, so I think I'll be a little more flexible about that. So
True. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mark's on LA time now, right?
Yeah. So our talk is I did it to accommodate him, but so like our talk is it's gonna be midnight my time to work it with his schedule. But I'm doing it on like a Saturday night, Sunday morning, so it won't be too bad. But like it'll be like
That's
9 a.m.
crazy.
for him. So like it dealing with like a 14-hour, 15-hour time difference.
I gotcha. Dude,
Yeah.
that's crazy. 15-hour time difference.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
is this the first episode? Is this kind of just like walk me through this? What do you want to do?
Yeah. So I was essentially just gonna kind of keep it chill. So I was probably gonna go through like we can knock out like bits of the filmography. Like I would say it's more just a conversation between us. I'm really not thinking much of an audience just because like if I'm just looking to kind of keep this chill.
Cool.
Yeah, but I at least try to have a little bit of a setup. Like I do actually have my shotgun mic on, so like you can kind of get decent audio as opposed.
Yeah, I just plugged in my new mic, so hopefully I
Nice,
sound a little better.
nice. Blue Yeti, or is it just your other?
Just a blue snowball.
Oh, nice, good shit.
Yeah, yeah. The blue snowball is like the cheaper version. I wish I had a blue Yeti, but I don't really need it because I was thinking about getting one like a while ago, and then I was kind of just like what would I use it for? You know?
Hmm. Yeah,
So
that's what I'm thinking. Like right now, just I have my shotgun microphone, and like I've got on a tripod little stand, so just it works out, and I'm gonna need
Yeah.
it for school anyway, so it'll be fine.
true, true.
Yeah. So I think just to kind of get things started, so I wanted to see, did you rewatch any Pixar movies leading up to this, or you're just like, or do you remember the last Pixar movie you saw?
That's a good question. So no, I did not rewatch anything leading up to this, but I'm trying to think of the last Pixar movie that I saw. Probably a while ago. I saw a Piece of Soul, but
Hmm.
I didn't see all of it. I also don't know if that's Pixar or if it's just Disney.
It's Pixar.
Is
It
it?
was a Pete Docter wrote and directed. He did Inside Out and Up and Monsters Inc. So he did those three.
Sick, sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Um,
I think we'll just kind of go into it. I think one of the first movies. I want to talk to you about this first. So, Cars is probably your big film that you always pump up. So, do you remember the first time you saw that, or like when you saw it? Did it happen when it first came out?
so Cars is a very interesting one because I remember seeing it in theaters for the first time when I was maybe like 8, 9, maybe even 7. I'm not sure. It came out in 2004, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it was '05. Oh, yeah, '05 sounds right.
Oh five, oh four. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like one of the first real Pixar movies that I like really, really got into, save for like, obviously Toy Story 2, Finding Nemo, and then The Incredibles. Like The
Mhm.
Incredibles is actually my favorite Pixar movie and my favorite animated movie of all time. But I think Cars has the biggest lasting impact on me because I'm sure you know this by now, but it's the film that inspired me to actually go out of my way to make my own movies in like a very weird indirect way. So the first time that I saw it in theaters, I remember just thinking, like, the first thing that came to my mind was, damn, getting Dinoco, like that blue thing with like the dinosaur, right? Like that whole thing of like Lightning McQueen, but like blue Dinoco Lightning McQueen was like so cool to me, right? And so everyone was just thinking about like, oh, like it's so cool how he never actually won the race, and everyone was expecting him to win at the end. And oh, spoilers for anyone who maybe hasn't seen Cars. But if this
It's 15 years old. Like,
yeah,
like watch it, or like, it's
Yeah.
the statute of limitations of spoilers is gone.
yeah. But yeah, like I feel like anytime I like talk about like any movie, I kind of just want to be like, okay, well, if you want to watch it, you haven't. It's pretty popular, but yeah. But anyways, so I remember just thinking like that part of it was so cool. There's a scene where Lightning is daydreaming about like getting like the brand deal with Dinoco, but like 7-year-old Max wasn't even thinking about that. 7-year-old Max was thinking, damn, he looks really cool in blue. But also there was like that part where he was like starring in a movie and he had like the jets or whatever, and he was like shooting the aliens. I was just like, so that gives you like a bunch of powers? Like I didn't connect in the dots that it was just a brand deal, like it made you popular. I thought it legitimately gave him like psychic powers and shit. So taking that, I made a Cars sequel before the actual Cars sequel. And so that's kind of like how I pitched my first movie that I made when I was 9 to people, is it's the sequel that came before the sequel, and dare I say, it's a better sequel to Cars than the actual sequel we got. So,
I've yet to see it. Yet to see it. Well, I mean both the Cars sequel and your film. So like one day.
So I actually have a treat for you. When I was moving, this is a new place. I actually rediscovered a few things. I rediscovered the disc that I originally burned it on. Right?
Nice.
So there you go. You got the date on there. 12/29/06 is when I made this. So I was 9. It was right after Christmas. I just really wanted to be symmetrical with this, so I put 2 happy faces, one on the right and one on the left. And then obviously the title, nice and decorated. And then the cover just says, this movie is rated G, but I wrote PG in the first thing because I was just like, oh, there's a little bit of like weird violence, but then I was just like, no, you idiot, like there's no cursing, there's no whatever, like you were 9, it's rated G. Like it's,
I mean, if you really want in the Pixar category, like all their films are PG, even though we all show it to our kids or something like that. Like it's a PG, it's a G in quotations, or PG in quotations.
And so then the next thing that I have is actually the original camera that I recorded it on.
Oh geez.
Yeah. So this is the camera that I received in Christmas of 2006. It is a JVC 32 times optical hyper zoom camera. Like that was a big thing, was that it could zoom in really far. And my parents were like, oh, like it's so cool that it's like so small and compact, but now it's like doesn't even fit my hand in it, And I don't have like large hands. So
yeah. It's essentially the classic home video look. Like I'm assuming it's like what, 480p or something like that.
It's probably 480. It might even be 360 or 240. I'm not sure.
Oh,
but
nice.
Yeah, and one of like the big features, like okay, you got your standard whatever here, but then also like it doesn't take SD cards. It takes like tapes. So I legitimately have to like find a way to charge the battery enough so I can eject this tape, because I'm sure that if I can read whatever's on there, there's probably some movie gold that we've never seen before. And the last thing that I want to say in terms of the camera is the lens cap is actually like attached at the hip basically. And so in the movie, in The Curse of Chick, you see me moving it around. you see me like moving the camera, and you can see the shadow of the lens cap dangling in most of the scenes when I forgot to like hold it with my hand or something. So, just a fun little look into the past of Max Remler.
Yeah, I think at some point we'll give it a watch. Well, just in the sense of like I think I've showed you my very first one, and it was like, and it was just me with a horrible French accent. But yeah, at some point I think I'd like to check it out at some point. But we can keep that behind closed doors, depending on when we feel like it.
Yeah, I think. Didn't you technically? I can't remember if you were there, but we showed it in the Real Film Club. We showed it at like the end, like the tail end of the semester one year.
Actually, I think I remember that now because I think we all it was like you, me, and Nick. We all shared our first films. I don't remember what Nick's was at all though. I don't
either. You should ask him when you're on this talk with him.
Yeah, I talked to him in 2 weeks, so so I'll talk to him about it then.
Sweet.
Okay. So yeah, kind of going back. So with Cars, I think the first time I saw it was maybe I didn't see it in theaters, but I think I saw it in 2006. I saw it in class in middle school, and and I thought it was a good movie. I remember watching it when I was I think I was 11 or 12 at the time, and and I'm okay, it was a good movie. It had that kind of he didn't win, so kind of a Rocky underdog sort of finish. Mm-hmm. But I'm just trying to remember, I rewatched Toy Story this week, and yeah, when you brought up Dinoco, that was the very first reference to Dinoco was in Toy Story when they're when Buzz and Woody are arguing in the parking lot. That's they're arguing at a Dinoco gas station. So I don't think they foresaw Cars becoming at that time, but I imagine when they're coming up with ideas, they're trying to figure out ways to be okay, how can we backtrack our worlds that we've built into into this story. So I think they work well in terms of backtracking with Pixar, seeing whatever they can in their previous films and try to work it into their next film.
Absolutely, yeah. And that it kind of, yeah, I mean, you can go as deep as you want with the Pixar lore, right? But obviously the big thing is the Pizza Planet truck. I feel like that shows up in pretty much all of their films that are, I guess, set in the modern day, because I feel like anything Brave, I don't think technically the Pizza Planet truck is.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I don't think Brave does. But I don't remember Inside Out really having a Pizza Planet one. Maybe
I don't
Up.
think so either.
Yeah, I don't remember those. But is it in The Incredibles or even Finding Nemo?
Finding Nemo, I don't think so, but I feel like it shows up from time to time. But I mean, the other one is the A113. I think that's in all of their films.
Yeah. I don't think it shows up in Ratatouille though.
Really?
Well, I mean, it takes place in Paris. I don't think I think it's a very U.S. reference when you have a Pizza Planet. So I would imagine it's in all the Toy Stories. I think just it's very dependent on location and setting for the rest of the Pixar films.
No, yeah, for sure. But I mean, the A113 reference is.
Probably, that A113.
That's usually in most of them. So, yeah, I feel like I love that type of stuff where it's just Easter eggs in a franchise of movies. If I ever make a set of movies that all kind of are universally linked, even if they're not. Just having a dumb little thing haha, I started animation 113, you know what I mean? Something like that, but for my films. I'm not sure what exactly that would be, but
Yeah, or even try to do it in the same way how the Cornetto trilogy does it, just kind of have a theme of jokes kind of running throughout the series. My big thing is the fences in the Cornetto trilogy just kind of have maybe just that little undertone joke, but they also have little darts with previous films being in the next movie sort of deal.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, keeping it going. So so the two, I did watch a few films leading up to this week. It was Toy Story, Ratatouille, and Inside Out. Consistently Ratatouille and Inside Out have been my favorite Pixar's. I just feel Ratatouille, it's just to me like the perfect kind of feel good movie. And I just
Sure.
have to say that's probably has like in terms of any animation I've seen, even on, like I would have to give live action a run. It's got the best like vertigo effect or like stretch shots I've seen in like almost any movie. Like, and I'm saying like I mean, the Anton Ego shot is probably the most like pronounced one where like he finally has the Ratatouille for the first time. I think that
Oh yeah, the dolly
that
zoom.
where like he has like the dolly zoom and he kind of goes in back as a kid. I think that's
Yeah,
probably
I mean, like that's like a trademark GIF at this point, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then like a more hidden one that I thought was very good was when it was I think within the first 10 minutes of the film is where like Remy is watching TV and he sees Gusteau. They use the dolly zoom effect to kind of have the characters connect. So like it's very hidden, but like it works extremely well that like, you know what, this is like very like technically like, you know, aware and just like, and I'm thinking more of a fan of just hidden dolly zooms than I am actually like the more pronounced ones because you see, because I feel like the dolly zooms are always talked about all the time, like in Goodfellas or like Jaws, but the
I was
hidden
gonna
ones I
say,
think are the
like,
more special ones.
most dolly zooms call direct attention of themselves, but you're right. Like the subtle dolly zooms where you understand it on a subconscious level, just with any other type of filmmaking technique that is like meant to embed you in the story. It's like so much better when you take a step and analyze it. I'm sure because I think the last time I saw Ratatouille was like within this year. I'm just not exactly sure when that was, but I definitely remember the camera work being very specifically done. And for an animated movie, like I know that it's Pixar we're talking about here, but for an animated movie specifically, like that's all deliberate. You know what I mean? Like obviously it is with live action as well, but like I don't know. I just feels like it's a different set of assets, moving the camera and changing the focal length of a camera in an animated film because you like literally have to like program it in, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm always a fan of just like little techniques like that where like it may not be like it's just that little perfection, but like it's sort of like a very technical imperfection that you can do like that you have to really work at in live action. And like, and I'll even kind of carrying off that in Toy Story 4, one little imperfection, but like it's kind of deliberate is they did a split diopter shot.
Right. Yes, I remember that
Yeah,
in Toy Story 4, right?
yeah. Well, like I know like Nerdwriter did a whole essay on it, but like it was just one of those things. It's not necessary in the real in animation, but it's necessary in the real world to kind of get a deep focus shot. But
Absolutely.
I always have a high appreciation for shots like that, even like handheld in animation. It's just
Right.
like one of those things. Just, but yeah, just uh, going from there. I think I also want to talk about like we're still on the topic of Brad Bird, so we've talked about The Incredibles and Ratatouille. So like he also what did you? So we've talked about those two films. What about The Incredibles 2?
Oh, okay. So could we talk about Incredibles 1 first? Because I think
Yeah.
technically, going back to your question at the start when you're like, what was the last Pixar movie you saw? Technically, I didn't see it, but I was just not really feeling the podcast that I was listening to on my like 3 hour drive back home from where I had to work. And so I was just like, what's like a feel good movie that I can just quote for like hours upon hours of viewing it? And then I thought of The Incredibles. So I played the audio version in my car. I think I just loaded it up on Netflix or something like that, or whatever it's on right now. Oh, Disney Plus, obviously. So I loaded it up on Disney Plus and I just let the audio play out in my car, and I could quote it very like a lot. Like I think 80% of the movie I hit the lines exactly as they were said. That's how many times I've seen it, and that's why it's like it's my absolute favorite, not just because it's animated, not just because it's like a superhero family, but because it's so quotable. Like, oh my God. And so branching off of that to Incredibles 2, I didn't hate it. I remember the last time that I saw Incredibles 2, all the way through was in the theater, but the last time I saw it, was just kind of like when my family and I were like flipping through channels on like cable, and we were like halfway through already, and we were just like, all right, fuck it, we'll just put this on until like the thing that we want actually comes on. And my mom was just kind of like, she did not care for it at all. She was like, ew, I hate this. And I'm just like, okay, but the animation's really good. Like, look at the difference between the first one and the second one. And she's like, okay, I don't care. Like, if it doesn't have a good story, then I'm not hooked. So I would love to hear your thoughts as well on the story.
Yeah, I think I've only seen The Incredibles 2 once, and I think I saw it and I did see it in theaters, but I can't really remember like much of it, to be quite honest. The only parts that I remember is that like in the second half, it's where there's the twist that like it was what is it? The sister was the was like the hacker, and then she had like indoctrinated or like hypnotized or did whatever to kind of like, yeah, like that's really all that I remember, unfortunately. But I had only seen that movie once when it came out, and I have to say, like from what I remember from it, it just didn't like hold up to the same expectations as The Incredibles. But I feel like it might be a bit of a nostalgia factor at the same time, because I do remember watching The Incredibles a lot when I was a kid. I think I was like 8 or 9 when it came out, and it was just one of those movies I had it on DVD, and I would just play it on rewatch. Like it was just like it was same deal with like Toy Story and Toy Story 2. Had it on VHS, I would just run through it.
So I'm sure that you can't really relate to this because I'm sure that you've seen plenty of movies at least like multiple times in theaters, right? But The Incredibles 1 was the first of like very few movies that I've seen in theaters more than once. I saw it twice. First time was just my family, my like family of 6. And like obviously my siblings and I were eating it up, right? Because we were kids. We were like, oh, this is sick. Superheroes, family, whatever. But my parents loved it too, because I really do feel like it appeals to all audiences. And I want to touch on that in a specific scene in a little bit. But I saw it twice. The second time with my extended family when they came to visit, and my parents were more than happy to pay for a second round of tickets for everybody. That's how good the first movie was. And that's like one of very few movies I can count on one hand that I've seen multiple times in theaters. But it appeals to specifically in 2 demographics. You have the kids watching it and the parents watching it with the kids. And usually when you go to kids movies as a parent, you're like, okay, you know, the kids are going to enjoy it and I'm going to enjoy it through them. They enjoyed the movie itself, right? And as I was rewatching it, like even in the car, just re-listening to it, that scene with Mr. Incredible's boss, Mr. Huff, like the really small guy.
We're talking about our people.
I love that scene so much. I've based like so many of my like dumb characters off of him that are just like angry all the time for no reason. But yeah, going back to it, that one part where he's like, he's getting mugged, I have to help. And so he's just like, stop right now or you're fired. And so he like dead in his tracks, right? And then he just goes, close the door, get over here now. Right? That whole thing where he's like I can't show my whole body, but he's like stamping his foot, like tapping his foot on the ground, and he like does this. Like that appeals to the kids having the parents say that to them, but then it also appeals to the parents having their bosses say that to them. So it's just like brilliant writing, brilliant like execution of just everything. Anyways, that's why it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and that is why it's my favorite animated movie of all time.
No, it's definitely up there. I would say top five Pixar. Yeah, but I was doing some research on Pixar before I did this, and I would say I would say at least half a dozen films are just masterpieces of Pixar. Like just like absolute like films. Yeah. Like I would say it's Toy Story, The Incredibles. Would you consider Toy Story 2? Yeah, would you consider Toy Story 2 a masterpiece?
That's the problem is I think I'm a little blinded by nostalgia, which I really try to undo when I rewatch movies now. I think the last time that I saw Toy Story 2 was a few years ago. Obviously, it's still very rewatchable. There was a point in time when I was a kid and I liked it more than the original. I think I just really liked the vibe. It obviously carried on the story of Toy Story 1, but it did so in like not the same tone. Does that make sense? It's kind of like it took on a voice of its own, like, and it kind of like it had a darker feel to it almost. Like
Well,
that
like,
whole thing of
I feel like it
that
dealt with
whole
the
thing of
reality
like,
of the future, like
yes,
knowing that like the finite like life that you have like as a
yes,
toy is gonna like it's very foreseeable. It's very much gonna end.
exactly. And so like that whole thing of like, you know, like you can connect it to literally anybody because nothing is infinite, right? Even the universe itself is probably not infinite. So the fact that we're all going to die one day, and it's just like, okay, so you can either lock yourself away in a box and just not think about it and be, and like try and keep yourself healthy and young forever, or you can embrace it and go out, be yourself, not miss out on anything. And so that's that whole thing is just kind of grounded in this, like, this kid's going to grow up, but I wouldn't miss that for the world, right? And I guess that now that I'm thinking about it, right, like the whole toy thing of like, oh, a toy's job is to keep a child happy. That's kind of like the parent's job, right? So like that whole thing with like Toy Story 3, when Andy is finally grown up, it's sad for everybody because like everybody grew up with the first two movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's very interesting because I don't know if I'm like going on too much of a tangent here, but like staying in the realm of like Toy Story, um, like the fact that it came out when it did and like sort of took its sweet time, um, obviously wasn't an accident, but it wasn't intentional either. And I really think that it worked in its favor because it allowed its audience to grow up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's
I
kind
mean,
of like, oh yeah, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. I was gonna say like we're kind of like Andy, like in generally speaking, and I think like you and I were pretty much to the same age of what Andy is through that through the first three movies.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I
just
think
oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
kind of I wasn't like in the like college age just yet. I think you were, or like you
Yeah.
were close to graduating high school.
Yeah.
I was still like edge of middle school, beginning of high school, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I was 16, 17. So like I think it was just right about that time where like I was finishing up high school. So like, but I didn't have the same sort of going away like Andy did because I stayed at home for college.
That's right.
So it was a little bit different. Yeah. But also kind of going into some research I did on Pixar before this. I looked back on something that I found, and did you know that the assets, like the CGI assets, were almost lost, like permanently
for
from Toy Story 2? Yeah,
2,
did you hear
right?
about that? Yeah.
Yep.
Like it was
Yeah,
just
I
like
saw that like video.
yeah, and it was in like some Pixar book. I'm blanking on the author, but like yeah, so like the what is it? Some routine maintenance, like delete like files were happening at Pixar, and then like out of nowhere, like somebody hit like a command key, like kind of like what is it? Typed in some command code and just started deleting all the Toy Story 2 files, and I think it was up to 90% of the assets were just gone, like just erased after like they realized and then pulled the plug, and then like and then they had like a backup storage system for it, but apparently this backup storage hasn't been working for months, so they're just
Hadn't
like
been working?
was not
Oh,
working. So it was months of their
shit.
like just not working, and they're like, how are we going to get these files back? Fortunately, they had one worker who was on maternity leave working from home who had all the asset files on her like little like I think iMac like 1990s. So like this thing was like it's a $90 million movie. So you have tens of millions of dollars of assets loaded on this iMac. So they had like a bunch of people just go over there, pack it up neatly, like had like two blankets over it. They had three people in the car. They had one person hugging the computer, like just trying to get it to Pixar so they could just extract all the files. Unfortunately, they got it all back with maybe just losing a few days work. But yeah, like they lost like, maybe like $50 million worth of like tens of millions of dollars of assets in like a matter of like a couple minutes. And then all they had was just like one person's computer that had all the files.
it's just so funny because yeah, like I remember hearing about that, and now, like especially after hearing that at work, I am always afraid to delete something now. I'm
Hmm.
always like, I'm just gonna let my hard drive be as cluttered as possible because the second that I delete something, you know that that's when my boss is gonna be like, "Oh, can you pull this from like 6 months ago?" And I'll be like, "Oh no," you know what I mean? Like, and then it's just gone. Like, they don't have it on like a big storage system. Like that shit costs money. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, I cost Toy Story a shitload probably,
yeah,
right?
and
So like,
like I will say they have the cloud now, but just like even then, the amount of money they have to probably like have to maintain that. So like they, because
true.
even now they still have 20-year-old assets. Like I'm pretty sure they still have the Luxo ball from these short film from the early '90s, like still on their, still in the cloud. So it's just like I can't imagine how many like terabytes of memory, like probably like it's probably an insane amount of memory that's on that cloud because you're talking about like 30 feature film, like 20 feature films worth.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of Toy Story assets, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's like a meme floating around, sort of. It's not really a meme, but it's like a picture with a caption. And you have like a side by side comparison of what Andy as the human looked like in Toy Story 1 and then what he looked like in Toy Story 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And my God, is it a difference? You know what I mean? Like,
It's such like he's such an uncanny valley in the first two, most certainly in the first one.
yeah, and it's funny because we forgave it. Because, I mean, one, it was animation, and two, he wasn't the focus. Most of the time, we didn't even see his face. And
Yeah.
I never really realized this as a kid, but it makes total sense. You know, it's just like the people making the film knowing their medium. You know, like
Hmm.
what films actually need to be animated? Talking fish, um, you know, superheroes, toys that can talk. You know what I mean? Like they can make human looking figures, but they probably at some point decided these look more like plastic toys than they do actual people. So they were
Hmm.
like, fuck it, movie about toys. You know what
I
I mean?
think I think it was just one of the, well, from what I understand about it, well, the way it was shot, it looked very much like a like a Peanuts movie sort of deal, like or like a Peanuts TV show, just very much like you know like parents and people are kind of in the background, like kind of like waist down, most certainly with the mom throughout the movie. But from what I understand, like it was very expensive for them to try to even like try to animate the human beings in that movie. So like that's exactly why like I think for practical reasons they don't have a dad in Toy Story. But I read some lore and there's a Pixar theory kind of floating around that like well I think it kind of goes without saying that like most assumptions that are made is that Andy's father passed away. But the reason it becomes interesting is because how Andy got Woody originally is that it was a toy from his father, and like and
Really?
it was like an heirloom. Like a hit, apparently like well in Toy Story 2 we see that like Woody was like a big promotional like it was a TV show had all this merchandise and
Right.
some a theory that's being proposed is that this promotional material they're about to run like a toy like a plastic toy promotion for the show and Woody was going to be like a prize that was given to like cereal boxes and then kids who kind of pull off the amount of tops would submit that to the company and get a Woody doll. Now apparently that get discontinued just because like of course like they went up to space, everybody wanted space toys, so they didn't really make like any productions of Woody. So like what Woody is actually a prototype of what these dolls would have been if they're finished. So briefly going back, apparently Andy's dad had polio as a kid, and he was trying to do his best to kind of get a Woody toy. So like he was pulling tops, but he didn't get enough for like to try to submit it like for a toy. So like he submitted what box tops he had, and he wrote a letter, and then he submitted it, and then he got a Woody toy. That's why he's so rare is that like because apparently the Woody in the movie is actually like a prototype for the would have been for the product line.
That makes
So
sense because we
and
never
like
see another Woody, but we see
mhm,
tons of Buzz Lightyears.
yeah, and and briefly going for more with it. So the reason like polio is the idea of why Andy's dad had it was because there's a theory floating around that like as a kid since he had polio all of his other toys were like were like contaminated, like all infected. So they had to burn all of his toys, but he managed to hide Woody as like his sole toy that he managed to hide, and he managed to keep it, and then like kept it throughout the years. And before he passed away, like after like post polio syndrome, he passed it off to Andy, and so that's why like Andy got so attached to Woody, and that's why he kind of kept it throughout the years.
Okay.
Yeah. So like it's just I don't know how far that went or there was any validity to it. I don't know if it's canon with the Pixar movie, but it was just an interesting theory that I'm like, I had not heard that before.
Yeah, where did you see that theory?
I can't remember. I'm sure I've got it loaded up on my computer, like on my web history somewhere. If I find it, I'll shoot it to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
But yeah, was it like a video essay or like?
I don't think it was a video essay. I do remember it though, like being on like some probably like some like article that I had read, but like it was just proposing like an interesting theory that I'm like, you know what, that there's some validity in there. That's got to be like why he was so attached to Woody, because even after like the second act of Toy Story, where he started to get all the Buzz Lightyear stuff, even in Toy Story 2, going to cowboy camp, in Toy Story 3, where he was reluctant about like giving Andy away, there's got to be something more than just like kind of getting him as like a present, like he did with Buzz.
Yeah, it didn't seem like. I mean, it's just interesting because obviously he was attached to Buzz in the first movie, especially, right? But in the third movie, you know, when he's like deciding what to take to college, like he almost immediately puts Woody in the college box, but doesn't put Buzz in there. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. So it would make sense, and it's cool because fan theories take things so far sometimes, but like most of them are very, very cool. And I feel like if any franchises of mine had, you know, dedicated fans, you know, cracking these codes and making these theories, I would almost want to adapt them at that point. And just be like, yeah, no, all that's canon. Like you got it. Good job, you know.
I like, but that's kind of the fun about that, because like I wouldn't say like that's like necessarily canon, but like I would say like there's got to have to be some validity towards it, because there's got to be some significance to why like Woody tends to be more attached than like Oliver. And it's got to go beyond just him being his favorite toy growing up. It's gotta have more to that. So that's kind of like why you want this justification, why like there's like more to Woody. But also, I was going also through credits from Toy Story, and it's kind of amazing, like the people involved with it, because it was literally everybody that still works at Pixar and has made like every film. Like you have like John Lasseter, like one of the directors, Andrew Stanton, who did like Finding Nemo and then like Coco, Pete Docter, who did like Monsters Inc., Up, Inside Out, and Soul, and then like one of the story writers, Joss Whedon, Marvel. So wow. Yeah, so like you have like, and then they basically have just been commanding like Pixar for like the next like, 15, 20 years, just making like every great animation that movie that came out that year was pretty much like those guys. So, and then like, and again, it just all started with Toy Story. It was just one of those movies where like just the top, like just everybody that was at the top, like of like CGI animation was at Pixar. And then even like Steve Jobs was like one of the founding members of Pixar. So it's kind of mind-boggling that like everybody like that was at the top of technology was just there.
Yeah, like Steve Jobs, the Apple guy, was like, you know, a Pixar founder in a weird way. Like,
yeah, well, like that's actually how he got back at Apple, is because he helped find he had like try to make something to get Apple to buy, and then like he ended up finding like, you know, like some technology that ended up going into Pixar, and then like his company ended up being bought by Apple. But I think the thing is that Pixar ended up eventually getting bought by Disney. It was its own independent company before Disney.
Right.
But what was interesting is after that buy, Steve Jobs became the majority shareholder at Disney. Like I think he had like 5 or 6% of shares because of the buyout.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so while like he made a shitload of money from Apple, like he made a lot of money from Disney.
That's crazy. Yeah, and so I mean, there's obviously like a few more things that I wanted to talk about in terms of Pixar, but one thing, as long as we're on the topic of like Toy Story and kind of the like pioneering of what would eventually become what Pixar is now, I really think in terms of filmmaking, it's really great for analyzing story structure. Because it really, like most of their films, if not all, followed like the traditional 3-act structure.
Mhm.
But they do so in like a really fun and creative way, I would argue. Um, and it's just interesting because uh, I don't know if you've seen this yet, and I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but as long as it's just for us, um, at my filmmaking school, there was a connection to the writer or one of the writers of Toy Story 3, like the main guy who like wrote the entire screenplay, Michael Arndt, and he had this like big, kind of documentary, like the making of Toy Story 3. And he was talking about how for like 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, I'm not sure, because I remember the original release date for Toy Story 3 was supposed to be in 2008. And I think it eventually wound up being 2010. Is that right? Do I have that
Yeah,
right?
that seems right. It was supposed to be. Yeah, it came out in 2010.
So he was like scratching his head and like beating himself up for like years trying to get this script off the ground. And he showed it to like the executives at Pixar, like including like Brad Bird and like all of those like big heads, right? And they were always just kind of like, this story doesn't really make sense, or they were giving like really weird, specific uh critiques, like your midpoint feels like it comes 5 minutes too early. Like what? Like if a critic tells you that as a filmmaker, how the fuck what do you do about that? If somebody said that to me, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But like respectfully, of course, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Um, but he went so far in depth of like how he actually wound up with the story that we now see on the screen. And it was such a grueling process. And if there's one thing that I've taken away from it, it's that you don't have to write a script linearly. You don't have to be like, okay, point A, point B, I'm going to make sure that like I get everything in between. Like you can have point A to point B, and you can have like points 1, 2, and 3 in there. But you can write point 2 before you write point 1 and then go to point 3 if it helps you. So like there was this big turning point, and I feel like I can talk about this because it's in the final movie. The scene where the toys are getting thrown away, right? Thrown away,
Yeah.
meaning like not all the way at the end, but I mean like the first act break, like when they were in the trash can by the side of the curb.
Yeah.
So he thought of that before anything else. And one of the Pixar executives said, if you can get the toys in that circumstance where they're in a trash bag on the curb, they have been thrown away, and the garbage truck is coming to pick them up, anything they do after that, I'm on board. Like they sound like, they know what they're doing, because like obviously they're pissed off. And we know why they're pissed off, because they think they're getting thrown away. So they're like, fuck this, I'm going to go to Sunnyside, right? So like that kind of sets the rest of the story in motion and gives him a place to go from. Like, how do you get to that point, right?
And it cleverly doesn't antagonize anyone. That's the clever part about it too.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's just kind of one of the things I wanted to say about Toy Story 3 in particular.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of like, because I also like tried looking at midpoints too of like some of the other Pixar films. So like I think in Toy Story 3, if I'm not mistaken, was it when they finally found out why Lotso kind of became villainous, or like kind of became very bitter or like cynical. I think that was the midpoint in Toy Story 3 where like they kind of go into his backstory. I think that's got to be the midpoint, right?
So, I think
or is it when Buzz?
Again,
yeah, I don't know.
It's near where Buzz gets like screwed by like him, like resetting or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk too much about the documentary that's probably not released just yet. But I think the actual midpoint is like straight up like a huge switch of stuff. It's usually defined by like, character A has a goal, character B has a goal, and they're usually opposing. Like maybe it's like the protagonist and the antagonist. In this case, it's Woody and the rest of the toys. Like Woody wants to get back to Andy, and the toys want to stay at Sunnyside. Then we realize that Sunnyside is evil, switch, and Woody leaves to go see Andy, and then he learns that Sunnyside is evil. The toys learn that Sunnyside is evil, so he wants to go back to rescue them, and the toys want to get out. So that's probably the midpoint.
Yeah. So like, okay. So like, I think we're pretty much at the same point of the midpoint. I think it was just like right there, like which scene came after. So
Exactly.
Like, I think, yeah. And also I was, the other two midpoints that I have at the top of my head, from Ratatouille and Inside Out. And Inside Out, I think it was when, again, I wish I had it right in front of me. I think it's when they first had the, like, where they first put the idea that like, that, to give Riley to run away, because I think once she starts the idea, that's the third act. But I think once like they mention the idea that like we'll run away and start new memories, I think that's like, I think that's the midpoint where like we're about to put stakes in this decision. So like that I think that's the midpoint where they put the plant. And I think it's also when Joy is with why am I blanking on his name? Bing Bong? That's
Bing
right.
Bong?
Yeah. So like Bing Bong had just lost the his little trolley, and then like feeling sad, and then Sadness goes to like comfort him. That's Joy's first realization that sadness is important. So I think it's kind of like it's got to be one of those two ideas is where like the midpoint is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but something around that point. But like I just remember like the structure in that movie being super tight, like just no messing about, and it was just like perfectly paced. Like end of first act, Joy and Sadness go up to the tube. End of the second act, Joy feels sad. Beginning of the third act, she tries to get back to Sadness and get back to headquarters. It's like a super tight structure, like the entire time. And then in Ratatouille, I thought this had a very interesting midpoint. This I remember well, and I remember actually looking at this. So it's where Remy had already started the restaurant, and he happens to bump into, I think it was Emile, and then like goes back with his family, and then he's telling his dad that like he's like living with a human, and then like feels really connected. His dad then shows him to like the poison shop with all the rats kind of dangling off. It's like pouring down rain.
Yeah.
Well, like that's where like there's like a conflict of philosophies, because his dad is just like, humans just want to kill us, we're nothing to them. Remy has that opposing philosophy, and that kind of gives an idea of like the kind of the hopefulness and like kind of like the connection that he's built. So like I think like it's definitely the midpoint of the movie, but that's where I kind of got out of it. It's just like his philosophy was tested, like he didn't give into what his father said. Like that's where like his midpoint was. It's just like, while it wasn't necessarily like a turning tide of like changing events of the film, but it was kind of like where his philosophy was tested.
Right. And it's interesting because when you think of Ratatouille villain, who do you think of? You know, like
I will say like the 2D villain in that film was like the French chef. I can't remember his name, but like it's the small French chef. Yeah.
I forgot about him, like the short guy.
Yeah, but like I feel like but he's like deliberately kind of two-dimensional. The three-dimensional kind of villain is Anton Ego, and he had a huge redemption that I felt like, you know, it was a really like heartwarming change that felt earned when he was doing his like voiceover narration of his review. That felt like, you know, this is an earned like kind of redemption for Anton Ego. Probably one of the best villains, I think, villains and all. Actually, yeah, you can call him a villain. I don't know why I put that in quotations. Yeah, like regardless of his change at the end, he was a villain of the movie. So
yeah,
like,
he's certainly the opposing force. But I also feel like, and I've watched enough video essays now, so forgive me if I sound like somebody with IQ 200 here.
Go for it.
But I feel like I've seen enough video essays to kind of know that a good antagonist will challenge your protagonist by not only thinking the opposite way that they do, but providing good points as to why they should think that way. And so I would argue that the dad is another antagonist. He's not necessarily the villain, but him putting up that, like, you know, that thing of like, oh, humans kill rats. Here's examples. Like, you're going to die. And so Remy has to make a very big decision. Is he willing to risk his life to be a chef, basically. Like that,
Mhm.
like those are the stakes. Is you get caught by anybody other than, I guess, Linguini, and you're dead. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
hmm
So
Yeah, and that's kind of going in why it was such great writing, because it's not necessarily because with the small chef it was very like two-dimensional, just very much just like cat and mouse or the human and rat sort of situation.
yeah,
Like, but no, just like yeah, what Anton Ego was to like Linguini, for instance, or like even like to both Linguini and Remy. His dad was very much to Remy, kind of like battling why do you have this relationship with this human. So like it was
right.
really kind of challenging that friendship. And sorry, can I keep going for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this also popped in my head as like an interesting note that I saw through a lot of Pixar films. The hero has a huge ego in like in almost every Pixar film. Like the lead has a huge ego in almost every film. Like if you look at Toy Story, Woody, huge ego. Like
True.
Mr. Incredible,
Lightning
huge ego.
McQueen.
Lightning McQueen, he, like probably like that's the most clear case. But yeah, Remy, huge ego. Like, and it's in almost
Remy has a
every
huge
film.
ego.
Oh, most definitely. Like he has a like massive ego. Like when he is like challenging the woman chef in there, it's like it's literally just like fun competition for him. Like I'm gonna get my food out. Like I don't care what you say. I'm taking notes from you as we're learning, but like my food is going out. He likes my food. I'm taking care of this. He has a huge ego.
Hmm.
Yeah, but like Ratatouille, yeah, Remy, ego.
I honestly never saw that. I always thought that he was much more of like a humble protagonist that was like, man, I just want to cook, and like, although he does kind of challenge Linguini a lot.
Yeah,
He'll be like he'll like go to put a spice in, and then Remy will just be like, you know,
yeah. Well, like, and it's also the fact that like that's why he got so spiteful, where like he did this one thing and Linguini just snapped on him. Like, and that's Remy's ego coming out, saying like, you know what, you got like he's saying to his rat friends, Emil, you guys want to eat? We'll eat after dinner. He got in one fight with Linguini, and just like his ego just took over.
mhm.
He's just like no, like even though like yeah, I'm a rat, this is my kitchen. Like
Right.
yeah, I might be working through you, but no, I did all the work. Like this is me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, but like, yeah, but even care, but like that, I feel like that's just like very common theme, like the common flaw in all these heroes, like very much so in Toy Story. I feel like it's with Mr. Incredible and The Incredibles. I think it's very prominent in Ratatouille. Inside Out with Joy, definitely. Like I think is
Oh,
like
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
even
like
though
it's
she's like super duper nice, and it's interesting because my mom has very strong opinions about a lot of these movies. She did not like Joy, and I feel like you're kind of valid for not liking her in a sense because she
mhm,
is very like like nice looking and as peppy as she actually comes across. I do think that she has this notion of like being too controlling, which is her big flaw, right? Like she
mhm,
means well. She just wants to keep Riley happy. Like that's her main goal. And she like anyone who gets in the way of that, like, she'll nicely exclude, which is what sadness is, right?
mhm.
But the whole thing, like I liked her arc of like being able to, open up and like understand people's different roles with things, right?
Mhm.
And even in the beginning too, like you have um like her kind of explaining the roles of the other ones, like fear being like, oh, we should be cautious. Anger kind of gives her a little bit of like standing up for herself, and disgust protects her from like, you know, disgusting foods, and like, gives her a fashion sense and shit. But
Mhm.
sadness has always been that like, ugh, like I don't want to feel this. Like
Mhm.
nobody, I don't think anybody actively wants to feel sad. Most of it, like I feel like that's kind of encompassed in a lot of us is we have this pressure on ourselves to feel happy most, if not all of the time. And if we're not feeling super peppy and happy, something is wrong. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, like we should, I guess the moral is like, you don't have to feel happy all of the time. Like it's okay to have your other emotions, and it is okay to be sad. And, like obviously like what, right? He's like 12.
Mhm.
So that's kind of when kids are like expressing their emotions a little bit more and not really sure how to feel. So
Yeah. I would also say that like with with that movie, like it also just felt very mature and like, but something like that, I don't know how to put this right. I think I'm just thinking that like sadness is kind of like a real bind of like how you're able to connect with people, like, or at least like connect with like family or like close friends. Just like sadness is like that real indicator, because like I feel like if we're all happy, it just becomes very superficial to some degree. But I feel like sadness is the real connector, and I feel like I feel like slightly that's hinted at, like when like sadness started like hovering towards like the memory balls and started changing. I feel like sadness kind of trumps happiness when it comes to connectivity. But Inside Out is certainly one of those movies that I would actually love to see a sequel with it, because there's a lot that they've done to build that world that like I'd be interested in seeing like what happens if you have like repressed memories, or like see, or like you can even kind of go into like a little bit more mature area where like what about like mental illness or like those sort of imbalances, like if you wanted to. I don't have to say it has to be with Riley, maybe you go with like a different direction, but like I'd be interested to see how they can tackle with it.
I would definitely watch that movie. I don't
Mhm.
think that that's what Pixar would go for. I think Pixar likes to keep their stuff with a good message, but mostly lighthearted. Like I feel like even with Toy Story 2, and it's like you eventually will die. You eventually will lose grip of your kids, or whatever. They still kind of manage to keep it not in the realm of like grounded too far in reality, where like you become super self-aware. Like I
Yeah.
think I have to be an adult now to understand the doom and gloom of Toy Story 2.
Well, I guess thematically speaking, but like I would like to maybe just see him addressed. But I like kind of moving forward, like the follow up to Inside Out, Soul, I think is probably like their most mature film to date, because I remember talking to Nick about this, and I know you haven't really seen it in full, so I might
This
be a
is the
little
one that
more.
I wish I would have seen.
Well,
Yeah.
we questioned whether or not it was like really for kids. Like, would kids even like it? Is what we were trying to discuss. Because while like you had the Tina Fey character, it just like it really kind of dealt with. I think his name was Joe, the Jamie Foxx character. Like, it was really him dealing with just like his whole existence. Like, and it like really was like front like in the face. It wasn't like subtextual at all. It was just like the meaning of existence and life, or like am I really living a life that I like or loved, or like just really like in your face about it. And this is a guy who's like middle aged, like, or like in his like late 40s 50s, and like really questioning his life decisions. And I'm like, this does not seem like it's for kids. Like, you had the Tina Fey character who's trying to learn from him and then like trying to find out her purpose, but like I felt like it was more geared towards adults, just because like Tina Fey was just more like the comic relief, which kind of like gave the feel good nature of the film. But just from what I was taking out of it, it was just like really deep of like, it does purpose is, do we really need to figure out our purpose of life, and like trying to get everything. I don't want to spoil it or anything, but like just the themes it was tackling, and then like the characters we were following just really kind of made me think like, I don't know if kids would really like this. Like, not saying it's a bad film, but I just don't think it had the same sort of antics or tone that like The Incredibles had or Ratatouille had. It just seemed too mature for them to really get out of it. And even some of the jokes that I don't even think kids would get.
Well, it's just,
Sorry, keep going.
I was just gonna say, like, it's interesting because I think no matter what the Pixar movie is, they definitely do want to incorporate some adult jokes or jokes for the adults. They don't necessarily have to have like adult connotations. Um, but yeah, it's interesting that you bring up Soul, because again, I've only seen maybe the first 15, 20 minutes of it. I liked what I saw. I just think that I haven't been able to like sit down and watch it. I've always kind of just like caught it on the screen of like, somebody that was watching in a different room than I. Um, so I don't know. It's interesting to hear about it in that kind of light. It makes me want to watch it now for sure.
Yeah, and it's just one of those films that like, I'd like at some point I want to discuss more about it when you've seen it, but it's just, and I definitely want to give it another watch, but it was just one of those like complex movies that like it's great. It might be like, I always think that like with Inside Out, I thought that was Pixar's best. While like Soul, like I don't maybe find it as watchable as some of its other movies. I think it's without question its most mature and definitely like probably one of its best, to be quite honest. Like I think like maybe it's not gonna be like a landmark film like it is with Toy Story, but I think in terms of discussion, it's gotta be one of its more like analytical films that like you can have like, you know, you can write a dissertation about it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And then what's there? Oh, you know what? I think this is just Disney. The one with like Raya and the Magic Dragon or something. I can't remember what it actually is.
No, I don't think that's Pixar.
That's not
heard of
Pixar,
that.
right? Okay. I just
No.
want to make sure
Yeah.
because I feel like with Pixar we should discuss as much of their stuff as possible. But
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't also seen their two other releases that came out. I think it was Luca was the most recent one that came out this year,
Luca, yeah.
and I haven't seen Onward. That came out last year.
Yeah, I haven't seen Onward either. It didn't particularly grab me. I genuinely forgot what it was about. I thought the character designs were cute, but you know, then again, it's Pixar. Like, of course, the character designs are cute.
Yeah, so I know at some point I'll give it a watch, but like I just wasn't like gravitated towards it. And like honestly, like when it came to Soul, you had the you kind of like Pete Docter is like one of the best animation directors working like now, probably of all time. Like he's like a director who's at the top of his game with the highest budget like that he can work in the best one of the best animation studios. So I was very eager to see Soul, but just the other films, I'm just like, even though it's Pixar Studios, I'm just like, I just wasn't as excited to see those as I was like Soul.
And that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I wasn't really gonna make much about this, but like the most easily skippable film, in my opinion, in Pixar has got to be The Good Dinosaur.
I have never even seen it. I've seen like
it's so
like
skippable.
video essays kind of about it, but like I've never actually seen the film itself. But please go ahead.
No, like well, it's like The Incredibles 2 is different because like I at least remember like parts of it, even though like I can't remember watching it in full. And I still have that motivation to watch it again, like because I still remember like getting some good laughs and with the predecessor of The Incredibles, I feel like I also want to watch a sequel. The Good Dinosaur, unfortunately, just doesn't have that foundation. But even on top of that, I don't really remember anything from it all that much. All I remember is that like it's kind of like this Ice Age-esque plot story where like this dinosaur finds a kid and they have to go rescue the kid while that's kind of like coming of age. But like it was just so like you kind of already knew the ending. The animation wasn't anything special. Like it was just kind of like a very very movie. And just I had nothing like I think really like jumping off the page as I expect from Pixar. Like it just seemed like very flat and like, you know, just wasn't a world like we hadn't seen before. I mean, like even with Cars, like okay, it's at least a world we haven't seen before, even though the successing stories weren't all that great. But just like we've seen like a dinosaur animation before, like many times, it wasn't really delivering like an interesting story. So I just feel like of the entire filmography, I think that's probably the most skippable one.
So even though it is the most skippable, I did kind of want to, like, as long as we're on the topic, I think that this is a really good thing to touch base on. Even though I haven't seen it, I'm sure you can kind of speak to maybe why you think it's so skippable. But I think one of the worst things for a filmmaker is when your movie is not good, it's not bad, it's not atrocious, and it's not award-winning. It's just you know, like people don't remember it, people don't really care for it, but it wasn't bad. It was like they were okay with watching it, but they certainly probably will never watch it again. Why? I just feel like that's a good thing to dissect is like, why do you think it's so skippable? Like you were talking about how the story was so meh and you kind of already knew the ending, like, can you give specifics? I don't care if you spoil it for me.
Yeah. So it was essentially like the same story as in the first Ice Age that came out in 2002. It was essentially like this dinosaur kind of got separated from his family, and then I think it was like he finds this kid. It's exact like not that the animals I think were separated necessarily, but they did find a kid. And then and essentially the driving force of the film is that they're both trying to find their families. So like they're both separated, but like they're trying to both find their families again. And then like they're both similar, like, you know, just kind of like coming of age. They're trying to be like, you know, but like, sorry.
It sounds cute. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's cute, but like some of the opposing forces are just like the environment, and the environments are trying to survive. Like it's dinosaur, sort of like Ice Age, like Neolithic, or like a kind of environment, like obstacles that they're going through. And eventually they make it back to their families. But it was just from, I don't really remember like the film necessarily like too well, but it was just a very like uninteresting story. Like it was just very uninteresting. Like, and I remember even thinking that in the theaters. I'm just like, okay, like I know where this is going. I know how it's gonna end. Let me just get this over with. And like, and it's okay if I know where the ending is going, but like if you're not like at least kind of like keeping me hooked to some degree, like on some deeper level, then I'm like, I'll pass. Because like it's kind of like Finding Nemo. Yeah. Like you know that he's gonna get found in the end, but just like keep me hooked to some degree. Like, come on, like what are some obstacles that you can really like think are challenging, or like even like funny jokes? Like I think the best joke in Finding Nemo, the two best jokes. One where they have the shark, fish are friends, not food. That's one of the best jokes. Yeah. And then they're in the dentist office, and you just have the starfish just placked on, and he's being tapped like, find a happy place, find like that. Yeah. It's at least like I think executed well to be like, even if you know the ending, we're gonna keep you hooked. I just felt like it didn't have any of that for the Good Dinosaur.
Yes. And again, maybe you can kind of speak to the Good Dinosaur here, because I don't really have a good comparison point. But
I also haven't seen it in like 6 years.
Yeah, and like what kind of helps like Finding Nemo specifically is like being reunited with your family, right? That's one piece of it. Like that's the overarching like tangible goal that we can follow, and literally is the title of the movie. But I think in addition to the cute little things that they run into along the way of trying to find each other again, the thing that kept me the most interested, even as a kid, was they had an argument literally right before he was taken away. You know, like we need to see the resolution of Nemo forgiving his father for being so like, you know, like controlling, overbearing and helicopter parenting. Yeah. And we need to see Marlin have that like overcoming of like, you know, like I don't want to be this blunt, but like he becomes more fun. You know, he's bouncing on jellyfish and riding on turtles, and like, you know, he's a daredevil now with these sharks and like these, you know, freaking torpedoes. You know what I mean? Like he just becomes a completely different person. That's what we're following, is that big arc. It's not just, oh no, like this father and son were separated. Like that could be a good short film if they don't have any beef with each other. But that's what kind of turns it into a cute little short film into a big feature, is the fact that we have all of this.
Yeah. Also, thinking back to Finding Nemo, it probably had one of the best like kind of intros into the film. Like it felt like the prologue with him and his wife, or like partner, whatever it is. Even though, like, did you know that clownfish actually are intersex?
Oh, were they like, they're kind of like, they change, or
they change sexes, like, but like, okay. But anyway, like, but yeah, what's interesting is that like that intro is pretty dark. Like they like straight up show like all the eggs like getting eaten and the mom is murdered, like, or like eaten. So I'm like, kind of got dark right in the first 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah, it's so funny because like damn, I wonder if they went through like multiple rounds of like making that a little less dark, because I feel like that was scary as a kid. Like seeing that big ass barracuda, like that shit was crazy.
Yeah, and it's probably like thinking about it, like with the exception of Up, that might be its saddest opening. Like I'm just trying to think of other sad openings. That's probably got to be the one. Like,
yeah, it's certainly the scariest opening.
Yeah, scariest.
But Up was just sad, like very, very sad.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of a meme now. Like the
Oh
entire
yeah.
opening is just
I
a
mean,
meme.
like literally you go on TikTok, like I don't know how active you are on TikTok. I'm not very, but like my girlfriend sends like plenty of things. Um, but like literally half of the TikTok songs are just do, 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 do. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that, the up song, like
yeah,
so yeah, like it's become so synonymous with that feeling of like melancholy slash sad.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, like that's another thing that Pixar, like we could talk about that for ages, but like the soundtrack of Pixar movies, like
Mhm.
fucking beautiful.
Michael Giacchino, dude, like he's been soundtracking the past couple big ones, like of like Up. Like I think he did like most recent Incredibles. He did I think he did Ratatouille and he did Inside Out. Like he's also done like a lot of other big budget movies like Mission Impossible. Like Michael Giacchino is the guy. Like you look him up, just like he's the next John Williams. He's got it. Like
I
he's
got
also
it.
done Star Wars as well. So
Oh yeah,
he's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so he's the guy.
So going back to the Good Dinosaur for a second, right? So in comparison with Finding Nemo, where there is an overarching plot of reuniting with your family, right? So that they have those two things in common. Um, but does the Good Dinosaur have what Finding Nemo has with the like they get into an argument and like that's kind of the last thing they say before the plot begins?
I think they did, but like I
Okay.
can't remember what it was about. Like I really don't remember. I haven't seen it since it came out, and I think it came out in 2015, 2016, something like that. So at least 5 years
Okay.
ago. So I haven't seen it since.
Yeah, I didn't really see much um I guess marketing for it. Like I didn't really see much like usually when you see the new Pixar movie that's coming out, like that it's coming out. Like there's like plenty of like posters and stuff. I remember when Finding Nemo was coming out, I went to Disney World in 2002. I saw a big poster on this bus that my family, like it was public transit, but it was for the Disney parks. And there was a big poster for Finding Nemo, and it was Marlin and Dory, really small, terrified, looking straight into the camera, and then Bruce, the big shark behind them. And I was like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God. Like you knew that like what was about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like thinking, wow, I want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really see much publicity for The Good Dinosaur. Like I
Yeah,
remember like a few commercials, but
it wasn't well marketed, to be quite honest. Like I think the poster was just what it was in the film. Like it was basically just like one of the driving forces was like there's this like handstone print that that the lead dinosaur wants to do. I can't remember his name. But like all of his family members have this handstone like right by their home, and he wants his too, but I think he didn't earn it yet or some degree like that. I'm like
it's kind of like
so
that brother bear thing,
yeah,
like they
exactly.
have
I
like
felt like that
totems
too.
or whatever. Yeah.
Mhm. So
Okay.
like it was yeah, so it was very much like that, but yeah, I think that was just basically like I only saw like the film poster, like it wasn't really all that like distinguished or anything like that. I was just like, I'm okay with it. But it's just
Mm.
like it's no, but yeah, I wasn't like like it was just like a myth film just coming from a great studio that made like Up. I'm just like, okay, I just expect more is all.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Um,
Um
Speaking of Up, like I obviously like without a doubt, I loved the opener. Right? I can't name a single person who didn't really care for the rest of the movie though. I have to say, like, I've seen it once in full, but that wasn't in theaters. I can't remember exactly where. I think I just saw it on like TV. Um, I don't know. Like, I kind of lost interest. Like, I liked the kid, and then like the old man. Like, I get like the whole
yeah.
kid and old man thing. He learns to be less grumpy and more like open towards people. And obviously, like the 10 minutes that we saw of like him and Ellie kind of gave us that like backstory that we really needed to be on his side. But I
Mhm.
just kind of lost interest after there was like the fucking talking dog and like the bird or whatever. Like I just didn't care. I just wanted to see more of like either the couple or him with the kid. Like I liked the ending when he like got the badge. Like that was cute.
Mhm.
But the middle piece, like I just didn't care. Like, do you want to just maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I feel like your criticism is justified, and I think it shows that you're able to name the girl in the opening by name. Yeah, and then
Really?
but like Carl and Russell were the others, or the other two.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's justified because like it is an opening that's been considered like amazing, like, but it is one of those things. Maybe they showed their cards too early, or like maybe they they kind of reached too high before like telling their story. Like it's one of those things. It was too good before they actually really started the movie. Could have been its ultimate fault. But honestly, I didn't feel that way. I was really into it, especially kind of dealing with like some like I was really into the Russell Carl dynamic. Like just kind of like
That's fair. Yep.
like. But like it's kind of like a classic straight man, funny man sort of deal. But like I just really liked the chemistry that those two had. And I was in, and especially like when they finally brought in Doug. And briefly speaking of which, I just noticed Doug is in Ratatouille. Like his shadow is shown in Ratatouille, like as like a little nod to like
Really?
what up would be in the future. Yeah. Like it's like towards the end of the first act of Ratatouille, like Remy's going like he doesn't realize he's in Paris yet, but he's like running like through like an attic or like some sort of like crawl space. And like, yeah, and he sees like a shadow dog, and that dog is Doug.
Oh,
or
wow.
at least like it. Well, I think it's supposed to be Doug, like, but like it's Doug, like a same looking dog.
Yeah,
But
like,
like yeah, well, like yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was really into it. Like, I can definitely get your criticism with it because I can definitely say like the villain, like I wasn't really looking towards the villain, and like the premise is simple, just like getting this house to South America. Like that's essentially the whole premise. Just so like I could definitely see there's not really much to tug at, but it's even like this kind of fantastical way of how we're dealing with grief. So again, like it's like that mature theme that I really like that are just like driving home with these Pixar films, like how like dealing with grief and then in this really fantastical way. And then like also with the premise, I like how it kind of started that like he like this inadvertent accident just happened and where like he bumped a guy on the head where he's trying to take his mailbox, which he made with his wife for like 60 years. And then like,
right.
Okay, well, we have this dream about going to South America. I'm going to bake a balloon that floats and I'm going to take it to South America. So it's just this really like very sweet way to kind of open up the premise. And I was just really hooked by it. So I think it just depends whether or not you buy the chemistry with the characters. I think that's the way it kind of goes from there because the villain doesn't really come into the third act, and like it's not like all that compelling to be quite honest. So
I don't even remember like the tie. Like I remember he used to be like a really marveled like pilot or some shit that Carl looked up to.
Yeah.
And it just I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
It's way over my head. I didn't like he was obsessed with like the rare bird or whatever. The bird was really annoying. It reminded me of the like Moana chicken that most people don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I was okay with the Moana chicken and I was fine with the bird, but I just didn't care. I was just like, why do I like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was such like a weird like side story of like, oh, rare bird needs to like pull a Rio and like mate with its family or some shit. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, but like it was just one of those movies that like kind of briefly going back, I feel like Pixar has learned about like trying to flesh out their villains a lot more from like films like this, because I feel like that's been a valid criticism for that film. While people love the chemistry of the characters, just building up their villains, like I feel like they've just gotten better at, because I feel like their first great villain was Syndrome in the Incredibles.
Syndrome was magnificent. I could go off about him forever.
Mm-hmm. And then like all these kind of real villains that they had following afterwards, like Anton Ego in Ratatouille, you had Lotso in Toy Story 3, then you had Gabby in Toy Story 4. Inside Out
cool too, because I don't think like just really quick, like Lotso was just like did not have a redemption arc. You thought that he was going to. Gabby, I never saw as like a legitimate villain. Not like she was bad, but I mean that she wasn't bad. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't evil. She didn't really have like this big agenda of like, oh, toys are like meant to be thrown away. We're just trash for humans. Like we didn't have that. you know, like it felt like she just wanted to be loved. Literally just like a nice parallel to Woody. Never, like, literally just wanted to be what he was. And
Yeah.
like it was so cute that she got his voice box, even though it was like, oh no, can't let her get the voice. Like, it's just, she didn't have any ill will towards anyone. She just wanted to be loved. Like,
Yeah. I genuinely like, well, it's also one of those things. That's what made her so complex, because I think she's a morally good character,
yes,
but just her actions and what she wanted to do were bad, but for the right reasons. Like,
Right.
it's okay for us to feel selfish, because like falling in love and wanting love is selfish. But that's kind of what made that character so great. It's just like, it's such a complex character. And just like, when we thought Toy Story 3 was the end, they're going to say like, we got another one that we think is interesting enough. And I'm glad that they did it. And I know you and we saw it together. I think I liked it more than you did, but
yes, that's right.
but like, it's just, but I have to say, like, that's like, I feel like it feels more complete for that reason. I feel like I'm glad it ended, like, if they are releasing a quote unquote Toy Story 5, I know they're coming out with a Buzz Lightyear movie, but like, I feel like it ends
That's
very
fine.
appropriately on Toy Story 4.
Yeah. So normally I'm not, like, I have a lot to say about what you just said in response, but like normally I'm not very particular to like spin-offs with like movies. Like, I don't think that every character from every movie needs their own movie telling their backstory. I was fine when like fucking Han Solo got one. But Buzz Lightyear has already kind of built his own like big franchise thing. Because I don't know if you ever saw this. I can't remember what it
Buzz Lightyear
exactly
Star
is
Command,
called.
like the television
Yeah, the
series,
fucking
yeah.
animated one.
And the
I
movie,
was like,
and the movie, yeah.
like, are you kidding me? Like, that shit was fucking cool. Like, it separated itself because it was 2D animation. You know what I mean? Like, it felt just like a completely different world, separate from, because it was like literally he was the Space Ranger instead of just being a toy.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily the same character. Like same character, but like it's not like the Toy Story Buzz. It's like how we praise the action figure Buzz Lightyear. So that's kind of like what's cool about it.
Yeah. And so what else were we talking about? So we're talking about Gabby, and then
we talked about like villains, and then we moved on to Buzz.
Yeah, so we talked about villains. Oh, that's right. About Toy Story 4 and me not really liking it as much as you did. I don't think it was because the story was bad, because I saw it again and I was just like, damn, this is really good. And I do think that them making a Toy Story 4 is in fact justified, because as much as you think Woody's character has grown throughout the three films, and he's, you know, you're never really truly done growing until you're dead. You know what I mean? Like, mentally at least. So the fact that he had this notion of like, oh, I have to take care of Bonnie. I have to take care of Bonnie. Like, Bonnie is my world, because he never really learned to let go of Andy. He just kind of projected himself, like him, onto her. It was very cool to kind of see him open up and be like, I don't need to please a child anymore. I could just be my own person, you know? So like, that was cool. I do think, looking back, the reason that I didn't like it as much, and I do feel like most modern movies, not just Pixar movies, most modern movies just have a pacing issue for me. It's not like it's bad, but I do feel like it just feels like they're trying to appeal to a shorter attention span or some bullshit like that, because Toy Story 4 is very fast. Like, if you watch the first Toy Story and then watch the fourth one, the story is great, but it's just goes by like that. Like, each scene like lasts like 3 minutes. I'm like, why? Like, give it some time to breathe. We don't always need to be on a big car chase or whatever. And then the other criticism I had was way too many characters, or way too many new characters to follow. Like, it felt like we were never with the old gang. Like, they were just trapped in the trailer the whole time.
Yeah,
you know?
I would say that's the downside, because like there's no Jane or really like Bullseye making an appearance, because those were critical characters that were set up in Toy Story 2 that paid off well in Toy Story 3. But like, yeah, I can.
Jesse.
I'm sorry, did I say Jane?
Yeah,
my bad, Jesse. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Suki.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but like no, that's definitely a justified like criticism. And I could also agree to that because I feel like the handing off the badge just felt like not quite earned as well, because I can agree with that. Because there wasn't a whole lot that she did in that film. If I remember correctly.
To Jesse, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not justifiable in that movie, but it would have been really sweet if, like, I mean, first off, if she had more of a role, but second off, if it happened in literally any other movie that she was in, like,
Mhm.
it would have been like, oh hell yeah, like that's really cool.
Mhm.
It's just dumb. Like, I feel like it would have been better suited to just get the buzz or something, but like obviously she's the cowgirl, like it makes more sense.
Yeah. But even then, just like I still really enjoyed the movie. Like emotionally, like I felt like the ending was earned, and especially with like the Gabby character and how Woody had changed. Like I
Yeah.
felt like it was very justified. But I could definitely kind of get the criticism of all the new characters, because you had the Key and Peele characters, which like kind of like
Did
not
need to
super
be there.
great. Yeah. And
Did
then
not
like
need to be there.
and then
I love Key and Peele, but they did
Yeah.
not need to be in that movie.
Yeah, and then well, one character I did like the Keanu Reeves character, Duke Boom.
He was fine. He was
Yeah, he was good. So like, I felt like, there were worthy characters. And also Bo Peep coming back, I thought was very nice.
Oh, she was excellent. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? And
Mhm.
it was interesting because when the trailers were coming out and she was in a different outfit and she had this like whole other attitude,
Mhm.
people didn't think that she was the same Bo Peep as the first, 2 movies?
Yeah.
But she was, and that was cool. That was
Mhm.
cool to kind of see like where she went after that, and like the fact like she even had like battle scars from being like a toy for so long, like her arm or something like came off, so she had to like tape it back or some shit. Like that was
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. But yeah, Toy Story 4, it's flawed, but like it's still a really good movie. Like it just, but yeah.
Beautifully executed,
Mhm.
except for the pacing and some of the characters.
Mhm.
That's it. And I feel like as long as we're on the pacing of Pixar movies, Incredibles 2 also falls short of this. I don't know if you have ever done the double feature. I haven't either in that case, but like of Incredibles 1, then you move on to Incredibles 2. Even though the time span is literally nothing because it's them fighting the Underminer is like the
Mhm.
first scene, right? Or technically, whatever. It's in that same range. I want to watch them specifically one after the other because I want to see how much the pacing differs, because I would argue it's very different and it's very frustrating for like, I guess an old moviegoer like myself,
Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, that's honestly, I would be interested in looking at it too. And I would also say this, as the films have progressed, because the technology has gotten better, I think the shots have gotten a lot more dynamic. And I think because they're able to do much more dynamic shots, like being able to like zoom like really fast, or like doing like handheld, or like doing these dolly zooms, I think
Yes.
I think because of that, they want like, since they have this ability to be able to make shots faster, I think like part of them is that like we can make these a little bit more faster, where early on I think they wanted to be slower because I think it was just too much to maybe like I mean, I don't know, like I feel like movies in themselves nowadays have just gotten faster through time, but like I think just still it's still questionable. Are you still there, man?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think my webcam shut off for some reason.
Okay.
Let's see if I can fix it. Yeah, but keep
Sorry.
going. I'm
Yeah.
still listening.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Like, well, I think just like I like in the mid '90s, like CGI animation was still new, so just so like I can imagine like they just weren't trying to do too many shots. But I know for like these length of shots that they were doing, like these much like a little bit longer takes, I think it's just like even like longer takes can even like cause more RAM than shorter takes that they did, or shorter shots. But I think just because modern audiences have come be more accustomed to faster pacing, I think they just did that to try to accommodate for it. But I would be interested in doing the double feature of The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2, because I imagine because I think you're right. Like they're completely different feelings.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, like, and again, it's not just Pixar movies that fall short of this. It's most modern movies. And it's funny because I watched Rear Window, like the old Hitchcock film from the
Great
50s.
movie, yeah.
Loved it. But I do feel like it's interesting because the pacing from that is much slower than something that I grew up with. And then compare that to like a modern movie from like the 2010s or even the 2020s. Like it's abysmally slow. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting to see that trend where movies will like progressively get faster and faster. Like I want to know what's causing that. Like I guess the digital revolution is a good thing to point a finger at, but I don't know how valid that is. Like what do you think?
Well, like I think a lot of it is coming us from consuming a lot of YouTube. Like I think like YouTube, like because it's shorter, like and you want to hook an audience, I feel like, you know, people go straight to fast pace because like you want to know what's going to happen next, like immediately, because you need to like keep your audience there. And I feel like for shorter content, like it's like commercials, like shooting like a slow paced commercial isn't all that engaging most of the time. Like people want something like kind of rapid pace, very dynamic to try to get people in. And it's so short. But I feel like the downside to it is that like it could be very over your head. Like it doesn't give you time to really sit and stick with it. It's just like, it just kind of goes into like really fast. It feels like more like a roller coaster, or like you're in the front seat of a roller coaster, just kind of rushes over you. You don't really have time to really bask and sit with it.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to kind of like maneuver some shit around. But I'm back.
You're good, dude.
But yeah, like it's so weird to think about like why would movies need to be faster? And yeah, like watching YouTube is probably like a big obstacle with that, is like you genuinely have to keep your audience engaged at all times. But that doesn't mean the slow scenes need to be like 2 seconds long, because the problem with that for me is, you know, take Toy Story 4, for example. You had, I think there was a scene with like Bo Peep and Woody, and it was just them, but they were like in the middle of this like big, you know, intense like climactic moment, I think with like sneaking around Gabby's place. And they tried to sneak in like an emotional moment somewhere in there. And I'm just, or like Woody was trying to like talk to her while she's like throwing a rope and like trying to swing to one place. Like it felt out of place and it felt unearned, you know, like even if they did make a big breakthrough, like that's the big thing with writing is, first off, you can't just write an emotional thing in there without any kind of, you know, flaws or obstacles. Like there needs to be some kind of payoff. I would argue that pacing is just as important, because, you know, let's say that you and I, like as friends, right? Like we're in a film and we have like the biggest argument of all time or something like that. And literally a scene later, we're just like, oh, want to be friends again? Sure. Like people would be pissed. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be some kind of buildup. There needs to be, you can't make amends with somebody you just fought with in the matter of 3 minutes. I hate that. And I just feel like that's where most movies are struggling, you know?
No, that makes sense. And like, honestly, like, you know, I could definitely buy your criticism with that. And like, and I think that's completely justified, because because now that I'm thinking back to it, I feel like you're more, I feel like I'm leaning towards that, to be quite honest, because I do remember it being a little glanced over. And like, even now that like people are kind of making, like, I feel like that's becoming a cliche in a lot of modern movies, that like, they're just very like they're not really like taking the time to really simmer with these arguments. So it's just like, they're very glossed over. So.
Exactly. And like, not to take this like too far, because I want to again stay in the realm of Pixar, but there was a really good video essay, I'm not sure that if you saw it, I think it was by like Nerd Writer, where he was talking about, you know, like the hero is like learning a new power, but like they're trying so hard, they're trying, this is like middle of the story, and they just can't do it, they're not strong enough yet, you know, they haven't acquired a thing.
I think it's Now You See It.
Oh, is it Now You See It? The thing with like Luke Skywalker
and Ant-Man?
Yeah. Like the fact that they just don't let it sit there, like his failure in Ant-Man took like 3 seconds versus Luke Skywalker, who took 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like there's just like, you're not letting the emotion sit. You need to let it bake. Like, don't serve that shit when it's undercooked.
Mm-hmm. I would also say, like, I have the same criticism with the climactic of Star Wars, the Rise of Skywalker and Avengers Endgame. Just kind of
I think I've only seen Rise of Skywalker once or twice because it was just like walking out of the theater, I was like, okay, this is interesting, but it was so much shit that you just had to buy, you know? And it was like, I only have so much money, dude. Like, I'm not gonna
it's so
I'm not gonna forgive every single little piece of story. Like, fuck you, J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, but like the scene that I criticized in The Rise of Skywalker is, well, like, I mean, there's a lot, but like the one is where like right at the climactic battle, all the heroes come in and save the day with Poe, like in The Rise of Skywalker. I compare that to the where all the heroes come in the climax of Endgame, and I feel like I want the Star Wars one, just like they have no time they don't really build it up. There's like, no like powerful emotion that's just simmering with it, where like they really take that time with Endgame. Like, it just slowly simmers, it builds up. But I will say there's a lot more characters that they build up in Endgame. So
I was gonna say, so here's the thing with Star Wars is I think it's interesting that it's like, all of these rebels, come out to help the resistance or whatever the fuck. But we don't know who these people are. Like, they're just ships. I don't know. Like, you could have just been like, oh, these are the bad guys. And I would have been like, oh, okay, interesting. Like, obviously, like, the ship designs are probably more clunky, whereas the Imperialist ships are like the triangle guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like, and then on the flip side of that, you obviously have Endgame. And Endgame is different because it had so many more movies for people to develop as individual characters. So seeing each one of them line up in a row was like fucking cool. Like, I'm not a Marvel fanatic by any means. I'm like such a middle of the road. Like, I'll see one once in a while. But my God, was it fucking cool seeing all of them in Endgame, even though I knew like half of them probably.
Yeah. Like, and that, well, like, and again, well, like, it's still going back to planting and payoff, because it was planted so much and so carefully that like once it finally paid off, you're just like, yes. And
right?
Just like there was nothing to that like in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker whatsoever. Like, and especially if you're trying to do like a trilogy, like, okay, at least try to get that going in the first two movies. So like once you finally have this moment, like you have it. But like there was no conscious like decision for that. Like they really didn't put any effort into it.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. I really thought, like, it's funny because I was talking to a friend about this, and I wanted to point fingers at Rian Johnson, and I feel like a lot of people wanted to, because he took what J.J. Abrams was building up to and then said, fuck that, I'm doing my own thing, which is a problem in and of itself. But I don't think that that's Rian Johnson's fault necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I think that J.J. Abrams set him up for failure in a weird sense, because I don't know, even if you like fully were into J.J. Abrams' story, answering those questions is a big fucking burden, especially when JJ was like, I didn't know like where the fuck he was going, and neither did he. But I was like, oh, what if Rian Johnson didn't direct the middle movie? What if it was all J.J. Abrams? That would have been decent, but I really think that would have given us more of like a fairy tale-esque Star Wars thing. Whereas what Rian Johnson was setting up was much cooler. To my friend at least. And I think I can kind of see where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was kind of just like, it feels like they're moving away from this binary of Jedi versus Sith. And it's like just all Force users, and you have to decide morally what you align with more, because the Jedi have their flaws as well, So like, I think that's what Rian Johnson was like trying to set up, but again, didn't have enough time. And J.J. Abrams kind of just like it went from like doop, 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 in Force Awakens, and then in like Last Jedi, and then back to this. Like, it made this weird S, and I hated it. It was awful. But the first movie's good.
Yeah, like, sorry, like I don't want to go too deep into this, because like we're still in a discussion of Pixar. But like no, but I definitely feel you. But like I'll also say that I also feel like Rian Johnson's a better director than J.J. Abrams. Like,
that's fair.
Yeah, conversation for another day. But like I think he's the better director. But
they just have different visions.
Yeah. All right. I do want to get this wrapped up. It's 10:45 where I am. So like we've been on this for like over an hour and a half.
I was gonna
So-
say I could talk about this type of shit forever. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
exactly. Yeah, no, you're good. But I think one note that I want to leave on is I think the first Pixar movie I ever saw in theaters was Monsters Inc. And I also think that's the first movie I ever cried at.
We
Like
haven't even talked about
2001.
Monsters Inc. yet.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
please go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I honestly think that's probably one of the best casted like movies of the franchise. I mean, like John Goodman, Billy Crystal, Steve Buscemi that's in it, like knocked out of the park. And I honestly Steve
Oh, he was
Buscemi?
Randall.
He was Randall.
Yeah.
Yeah, like honestly,
I was like,
probably
wait, who?
I feel like one of the best casted villains of all of Pixar, to be quite honest. Just like, it just makes you feel uncomfortable the entire time. I'm just like, but that's the goal. I'm just like, oh, Randall, so great. Steve Buscemi, amazing.
Agreed. And then like with the prequel, like you find out that he was like friendly and nerdy before this too, and then he kind of grew into like this like shriveled up like incel, like, oh, I'm always second best, but I'm gonna be the best when I come out with this. Like it kind of reminds me of Syndrome in that way. Like I fucking love that. I love like morally good characters that mean well in the beginning, and then they just get fucked over by like society or their hero or whatever, and then they're just like I'm gonna maintain this mentality of being obsessed with this thing, but I'm gonna twist it and like, you know, make it for my own personal gain. Like I fucking love Syndrome and Randall, and just like how they just want to be like Syndrome just wants to be a hero, but in doing so he became the villain. Like it's just very dark idea.
Well, like also The Incredibles is interesting because like it's not like you have the ability to become one. Like it's just you're predetermined.
True.
Like that's what's also kind of like you kind of relate to Syndrome because like, you know, you just weren't picked. You like that's your luck. Like
True.
To be a super, you're predetermined. You're not selected. Like, you know, and that's why like I feel like that world and like why Syndrome feels the way they did. I'm like completely justified, like completely spot on.
Exactly. And it's just like it's so cool because like he's still like the kind of nerdy comic booky kid that's like obsessed with heroes. So he's like when he's like playing out the dramatic like evil plot that he has, it's just to be recognized as a hero. You know what I mean? Like that whole thing where he's like staging everything and the robot is like under his control, but he like makes it seem like he beats it up or some shit. Like he's just so obsessed with like this chaos because it's like something he sees on TV. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, this is so cool, right, guys? You know, like it's just funny to watch on screen.
God damn it, buddy.
But yeah, like he's, oh my god, one of the most quotable villains I think of all time in life.
Probably one of the, like I would say like definitely in the top 5 best quotable. I mean, like if we're putting like the Toy Story characters, like Buzz and Woody are probably very quotable, but like I think Syndrome is probably the most quotable character. Like after that,
in Pixar for sure, but I mean like okay, like in terms of quotable, memorable villains, if like Thanos and Darth Vader is up here, Syndrome is like the next line down, you know, like at least. And you may agree or disagree with me, I'm not sure, but like, you know, he's obviously not like the greatest villain of all time, but he matches Mr. Incredible with like that weird, you know, anti, you know, belief. Like it's just crazy because they're both obsessed with the superhero life, both for different reasons, right? It's just it's so interesting to dissect.
And like I'll also say that like I like thinking about that, like I could definitely see him up in the top tier because like the other ones you have is like Darth Vader or the Joker, for instance.
Oh yeah.
Like so just like he's definitely super quotable. Like even to like his more comedic moments where he doesn't need to like sound like evil. It's more just like him just chatting when everyone's super.
No one will be. Well, he even does an evil laugh too. So I'm wondering how self-aware he actually is, because there's obviously comic book villains like the Underminer in The Incredibles. So at what point do you like, you know, turn the mirror on yourself and be like, oh shit, I just did an evil laugh, like, you know, those villains that I grew up hating. You know what I mean? Like I kind of wanted to see more of Syndrome. Like, I'm not saying that we needed a sequel where he was the main villain again, but that probably would have been better than what we got.
Yeah, that's fair.
In terms of villain.
I feel like there's also the part of me that like I would have liked to have seen The Incredibles where you had like a superhero that didn't want to be a superhero. Like I always like reluctant hero stories where like I don't want to be a hero, but like because of whatever X reason, like it's more important for the greater good, so I have to do. So like I feel necessary to do it. I feel like we just haven't seen that in The Incredibles yet, and I feel like it's just such a story that like it's not. You've set up the world where that's possible. So like I would at least like to see like it doesn't have to be any of the lead characters, of course, but like seeing like a secondary character where like I don't really want to be a hero, but like because of this, like I was born with it, like I don't want to be a part of that life. But I don't know, maybe that's cliche because I've like feel like we have seen that a little bit before, but
we have.
I don't know.
But I think you bring up a good point with putting it in the Incredibles universe, because I think the counterpoint would have been I've seen enough of that in Marvel movies where like the origin story movies of like any superhero is always just like, oh, I don't know, I'm just this normal dude, and all of a sudden I have this like magical thing that makes me superhero. And it's just like, I don't know. Like, obviously the ordinary character getting transformed into something supernatural is fucking cool to follow, but I do think that we've seen enough of that. But putting it in the Incredibles universe, especially contrasted with Syndrome, would be fucking cool.
Yeah.
You know, like I can imagine a plot where, obviously I know he's dead in the canon, but I can imagine a plot where maybe he's like middle of the road, like he's not like where he was like in terms of like Mr. Incredible's sidekick, like that age, but he's not like fully Syndrome yet. He's like a middle.
Yeah.
And there's like this one hero that he encounters where he's like, kind of sympathetic towards him because he doesn't want to be a hero. And so Syndrome is like, well, I have this technology that could maybe, siphon your powers away from you and give them to me. And so obviously the hero's like, fuck it, I want a normal life, fuck this. Yeah. And then something goes awry, and like that's the only friend that Syndrome actually has or some shit. And then like he dies, so that kind of furthers him being like pissed off,
Yeah. And you can even kind of go to the idea that like maybe superheroes can be jaded. Like you kind of set up a bit of that tone where like Mr. Incredible could be jaded at like a 9-to-5 job. Like it could be an interesting dynamic to kind of see like a jaded superhero.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. I think I'm going to wrap this up now. It's like, we've been on the call for almost 2 hours, but of course. Real briefly for next week, I'm going to talk about Robert Eggers. So I wanted to talk to you about so The Lighthouse.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about it a little bit? Just because the reason I bring it up with you is because we kind of made a film based on The Lighthouse a little bit. So
we kind of did. Yes. Yeah, so sadly it's getting rejected by most of the Cambodian film fests out there, sadly.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, they mostly just want Cambodia-based films is the thing. That's the thing that's kind of shitty. But I guess it is what it is.
Regional films will always be first pick, which is totally fine. I get it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But sure. So what specifically do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about Starved, or do we kind of want to just keep it towards Lighthouse, or a mix of both?
Probably just a mix of both. We'll just spend a couple minutes on it.
Cool.
Yeah. But I mean, do you want to start off with it?
Sure. So I could probably just give first impressions. I think so. The first time that I saw The Lighthouse was with Casey, and it was over Zoom. This is very interesting. And this was when our relationship was very new. So we just spent the entire rest of our date after that just dissecting the whole fucking movie. And I don't know, I'm a huge sucker for anything with a lot of symbolism. I loved allegories. I loved Lord of the Flies. I think that's the only book that I was forced to read in school that I actually enjoyed. I don't know. I remember I had plans of writing an allegory myself. And so seeing so many things that I don't understand, but I know have overarching meanings in The Lighthouse, that gives me inspiration to add my own symbolic stuff. So like you remember in Star, the golden apple, like that whole thing of like, you know, if I just had this one thing, like this is, you know, the one thing that's keeping me, like it almost feels like I don't know, like one of those things where you think it's like this heavenly object, but it's more like the apple in the Garden of Eden, you know? Like it's kind of like that. Um, yeah, like, I don't know. I just think that there's a lot to dissect in terms of symbolism, and that's probably my favorite thing about the lighthouse.
Yeah.
And also
I
just the artistic, like the fact that it's black and white and like almost a box in terms of aspect ratio, like that just immediately gives off like a vibe.
Yeah, like to me, like I would agree with that. Like the entire symbolism of it, and like the whole idea of the lighthouse and the climax of it was just like it was just very enthralling. But I think like to me, like what I praise about Robert Eggers is probably his ability to like uh, make these films in unique settings. Like I feel like it's like Promenade in the Lighthouse, kind of like we've been at a lighthouse before, but not necessarily in this black and white like aesthetic, very long lingering shots. Almost feels like a Tarkovsky film.
Right.
And like it feels similar to like The Witch, like a very interesting like setting. Like haven't really seen a horror film really in this setting before, and it's like realistic. Like they're like like the dialogue in it like is very like grounded and like you know authentic. It's not like faux English. Like no, it's like real old English, very carefully meticulated dialogue that I'm like it just feels very raw. And then but like I also love that his films like can be very fantastical. Like, you know, there's like an element of realism to it, but then also like this fantastical feel at the same time. And I feel like very much so in The Witch in terms of the ending, but like The Lighthouse, it's kind of fluttered throughout, but like that's kind of just what made it so amazing. Just like just this interesting world that he sets his movie in. And I can't wait for his next one because he's setting it in like 10th or 11th century Iceland, and it's got like $110 million budget. So it's just like, you know, a super high budget, like, you know, interesting setting film that like, you know, because we don't really watch middle-age films, like films from the Middle Ages. So I'm going to be super curious how that turns out. And I like that he does it this way. Yeah. So he knows what the hell he's doing when it comes to this.
Absolutely.
So like, yeah. But I think that's pretty much it. Like, just kind of want to give a little bit of your thoughts because I think I might carry it over to my talk with Spencer next week. All right.
Actually, so could you ask Spencer a question for me when you guys do talk about it? Also, please send me these because I would love to have them as like just a podcast that I could listen to on my long car drives. Because sometimes I'll go from like New York to Delaware, or vice versa.
Sure, dude.
But yeah, can you ask Spencer, and maybe I'll ask you this now, what you thought of the, specifically in the lighthouse, the foghorn noises? Because I've heard mixed reviews. I kind of like it for setting the tone. It sets the eerie tone, but also kind of lets you know, like you're not like out at sea, but like you're always by the sea. But you remember Sierra fucking hated it. She was like, I'm done. I was done with this after like 5 minutes. And like, that's fair. Like, it's a really annoying sound, but it's not meant to be pleasant. It's supposed to add to the atmosphere.
It's unsettling. Yeah.
So like, what did you think?
I feel like it works for the film because like they're kind of being brought in by ship. It's like on an island, like you said, you want them to be like near water, like because it's really the idea that they're isolated. Like there's not like there's no other land nearby. That it's just surrounded by water, and like you know the foghorn really sets this kind of like ominous, like dark tone. And I feel like you're setting the world appropriately. That like it's kind of like this unsettling, like uncomfortable feeling that you're stuck on this island. So I think it's like I was okay with it. It wasn't annoying me, and I was a big fan of I was a fan of the sound design in it. Like I felt like it worked.
Absolutely, yeah. I kind of get where she's coming from. Like it's good sound design, but like, is it overused?
Yeah.
I think just a bit, but I like it. I like it in terms of setting just reminding you that you're still out at sea. And, you know, this is just something that they constantly have to deal with, you know, when they're living in a lighthouse or on a boat, you know what I mean? So,
yeah. It's kind of like Willem Dafoe's farts, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. This was a lot of fun. We
Yeah,
should
dude.
definitely catch up sometime. I'd love to hear how
Exactly.
your teaching job's going.
Exactly, dude. If also I had an idea for the next one we do. Would you want to do Dan Harmon for like our next talk?
That'd be great. Yeah,
All
just
right.
let me know when.
Yeah, we'll do, man. I'll let you know. All right, man. Well, take it easy, man. Thanks for doing this with me, by the way. Like, had
Of
a lot of fun.
course. Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thanks for coming up with this idea. Like, this is sick.
Yeah. It'll be cool though. All right, dude. Well, take it easy, man. Enjoy the day, and I'm sure we'll catch up at some point.
Yeah. Have a good sleep. And yeah, I mean, good luck tomorrow at your job.
Yeah, I'll try. All right, man. Take it easy.
All right. See you, man.
See ya.